Good morning. My name is Cindy Chelkin. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm today's worship associate. Welcome to the Unitarian Society of New Haven, USNH, where together we seek to inspire lives of compassion and generosity, nurture spiritual growth, cultivate transformative connections, and create a more just world. At this time of the year, when we raise up our country's Black history, and in every season, we believe that Black lives matter. As a congregation, we seek to heal the wounds of the past and present in ongoing work of reconciliation. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your heritage, and from wherever your beliefs spring, we are so glad you are here in person or virtually. There are several announcements today. If you are visiting us for the first time, or perhaps new enough to USNH that you have questions about Unitarian Universalism and our congregation, we invite you to the social hall right after the service to grab a bowl of delicious soup and some bread, or a cup of coffee or tea, and join the Connections team in room 209 upstairs and on the left for the monthly visitors chat. Children are welcome. Please note that hearing devices are available in the back of the sanctuary. And there is a section here for those who wish to wear masks, among others doing the same. We welcome young families and have a special place in the back of the sanctuary for your comfort with little ones if you'd like. The social hall is wired for sound if you or your children need a break at any point. And the Sunday morning team invites us to Soup Sunday in the social hall following the service. On behalf of the Stewardship Committee, whom I hold dear, we remind you that it is pledge season. You can make your pledge after the service at the stewardship table in the social hall, as well as online. As we invite Manya Lissi, one of our dedicated religious education teachers, to share her perspective on stewardship, let us now turn our devices to silent mode, settle in, and share this time together.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you all for inviting me to speak. My name is Manya Liss, she, her, and I became a Unitarian because I wanted my children to have a religious education that would teach them to be open and accepting, to see the good in other people, and to strive for justice and compassion. My first day at USNH 9 years ago, I didn't get to hear the sermon. There was a children's chapel, and my 4-year-old wanted my company. I had never been to a children's service which welcomed young children through teenagers, and I certainly hadn't been to any service where everyone rushed outside to plant bulbs. Children being outside in the sun seemed like a glorious education. Life happened, and I didn't return for a year. Jesse, through his Jesse Magic, which is the backbone of USNH's RE program, remembered our names and warmly welcomed the children back, and I was sold. Now I'm one of the co-chairs of the USNH Youth RE Committee. I have 3 kids in RE. I've participated in adult religious education. I am a teacher, and I am very proud to say I've won an award for being appropriately inappropriate in our whole lives. One of my proudest moments. USNHRE spans from children too young to walk to the most adultiest of adults. In neighboring faith, tweens have the opportunity to visit churches, temples, and mosques in addition to going to Boston to explore the roots of our religion. In OWL, presented in different ways at different ages, children get to learn about sexuality without shame or fear-mongering. In YRUU, teens camp, do field trips for service, and create their own worship services. But learning doesn't end with the end of childhood. Adult RE has opportunities to build bridges with other faith communities, to discuss books, to work on personal writing, to delve more deeply into the themes of the services, and even to learn to dance. Oh. While the offerings between adult and youth RE differ, this is the only congregation I've been to that brings the two together, because UNSH RE extends far outside the classroom. There is the Buddy program to link the older and younger generations. Events like the Olympics, the Halloween party, the New Year's Eve parties, and game nights are religious education. These events remind us in a very specific, non-abstract way that every person, even old people who seem scary, even little people who can be very, very loud, have worth and dignity. The opportunity to mingle and to let that dignity slip a little allows us to acknowledge, accept, and treasure our similarities despite our differences. That is one of the most important things to learn and the basis for a religious education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manya, for your stewardship testimonial. Good morning. My name's Sunny. I am the ministerial intern here at USNH. My pronouns are she and her. And I call us to worship this morning, and we light the chalice with my favorite opening words, which are adapted from those of the Reverend Dr. Davidson Lohr of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Austin. It is a sacred time, this. It is a sacred place, here. It is a place for questions more profound than answers, for vulnerability more powerful than strength, for a peace that can pass all understanding, It is a sacred time, this. So come, let us celebrate the opportunity to gather in this moment to explore and learn and grow together with this group of people in this beautiful sanctuary that we get to call home. And so it is.
Covenant lies at the center of how Unitarian Universalists and our religious forebears gather in community. We are united not by a particular set of beliefs, but by the promises we make about how we will be together, how we treat each other, and how we will seek to mend relationships when we fall short of our aspirations. While the following words express our intentions in writing, our true covenant lives and breathes in our actions. Please join me in saying the words of our shared USNH covenant that appear in your order of service or on the chat on the live stream. We covenant together to create and nurture a culture of respect and kindness, and to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving more generously. To this end, we will strive to be open, value differences, listen deeply, use kind language, speak our truths, work with conflict, and seek humor and joy. I now invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing hymn number 1018 in your teal hymnal, Come and Go With Me.
Good morning. My name is Jesse Grice. I'm the Director of Lifespan Religious Education. My pronouns are he, him. And I wanted to thank Manya again for your stewardship testimonial. The RE program really does sound pretty cool. I have to apologize this morning because I don't have a message for all ready for you. I tried and tried and tried this week to think of something, because what I really wanted to talk about, the theme for this week, if you will, are the things that can lead to divisions between groups of people. And I thought about this, and I thought of so many stories. There's the Sneetches by Dr. Seuss. There's also the Butter Battle book. There's so many stories out there that talk about how we end up in differing groups of people. But as I was trying to come up with a story about this, I was driving my car down the Merritt Parkway, and I'm in the right lane on the Merritt Parkway, right? And I'm trying to think of this story. And there was some construction up ahead. And I was just, all of my mind, I was just trying to concentrate on what are the factors that can make a person who feels connected to every person around them suddenly feel like I'm with this group against these people. Or I'm with this group against these people and they are the enemy. And as I was trying to invent a story about this, I noticed that there were signs that there was construction up ahead. And my lane had to move over to the left lane. And I noticed that all the people that were in the right lane had their turn signals on and were looking back and were kind of smiling at the people behind them. And everyone in the left lane was trying the best that they could to keep everyone from moving over. And the traffic just became snarled, and I couldn't think of a story. So I kept trying and trying and trying to move over towards the left, and finally I was able to battle my way in between two cars, and I made it over into the left lane. And this weird thought happened to me. All those people over there want to get here. They're trying to pass and go up ahead and get in there. I'm not going to let them in. Those right lane people. And so we battled, and finally, with all of the slowdowns in traffic and all of the wrangling to see who could get in there, we finally all merged into one lane, and everybody started to move again, and harmony returned. But I still couldn't come up with the right story to tell for this Sunday. So again, I apologize for not having a good message for all, but I will let you know if I think of something, because it's a really complicated subject, what it is that makes people separate out into those groups. So perhaps the kids can come up with something while they're in their classes today. But in the meantime, I invite you to sing them out to their classes with Go Now in Peace on the Merritt Parkway. Go now in peace. Let us sing together as the children move off to their classes this morning. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere you may go. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere you may go. That was a really good message for all. In this spiritual community, we remind ourselves each week that joy and woe are woven fine. Some of us bear burdens made lighter as others help us carry them. Some of us hold joys that shine more brightly as others reflect our delight. Jane Copes writes today, "I'm so grateful for Greg Feely, who serves us books." And he does. For others who hold joys or sorrows in their hearts,
Let us take a moment to bear witness and think of them. And together, let us give thanks for this community of care and love.
I open our time of meditation and silence today with words from Howard Thurman. Thurman was many things, from a spiritualist and a mystic to the first Black dean at a mostly white American university, Dean of Marsh Chapel at Boston University. And this meditation comes from a collection of meditations that Thurman created for use during quiet time at the congregation he founded in 1944, Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples in San Francisco, which was the first integrated interfaith religious congregation in the United States. I seek the strength to overcome the tendency to evil in my own heart. I recognize the tendency to do the unkind thing when the mood of retaliation or revenge rides high in my spirit. I recognize the tendency to make of others a means toward my own ends. I recognize the tendency to yield to fear and cowardice when fearlessness and courage seem to fit easily into the pattern of my security. I seek the strength to overcome the tendency of evil in my own heart. I seek the strength to overcome the evil that is present all about me. I recognize the evil in much of the organized life about me. I recognize the evil in the will to power as found in groups, institutions, and individuals. I recognize the terrible havoc of hate and bitterness, which makes for fear and panic in the common life. I seek the strength to overcome the evil that is present all about me. I seek the strength to overcome evil. I must not be overcome by evil. I seek the purification of my own heart, the purging of my own motives. I seek the strength to withstand the logic of bitterness, the terrible divisiveness of hate, the demonic triumph of the conquest of others. What I seek for myself, I desire with all my heart for friend and foe alike. As we enter a moment of silence followed by a musical response, I invite us to hold in our hearts the timeless and very timely words of Howard Thurman.
Congregations can be places where we practice the art of generosity. It is a spiritual practice. It's a very, very good one, and we encourage it. We, in fact, need it. So if you would like to make an offering, and we do this every week, it's a strange custom, but we do it, feel free to contribute as you leave this sanctuary after the service. Feel free to go online and do it that way if you prefer, if you live in the digital realm. I've read about it. I don't know what it's really like, but I've read about it. And if you would like to simply drop something in the mail that comes to 700 Turnpike, Hartford Turnpike, we would love to receive something in the office. But one way or another, be generous and give. Now, this may confuse matters just a touch because our annual canvas is not like the offering. The offering is just what we naturally do when we come into a place and share this room together. But I want to say just a word or two about the canvas that's going on right now. And I'm a good New Englander on this, and I'm really perfectly confident and happy to say that this place deserves your pledge. I can say this because I haven't gone native yet completely. I work here, but I can observe you and I can see what you do for each other and for the community. I saw what happened here last Sunday afternoon when we had almost 200 people come and talk about the nature of New Haven and race in our community. So I see what you can do. And I think it's well worth contributing. And so I'm going to be a little nervy, and I'm going to ask those people that are on the stewardship campaign to raise your hands. These people are working really hard, and I would submit to you that don't make them have to call you. I mean, you may want to call, but just let me know and I'll come visit you. These people work really hard, and they shouldn't have to scramble just to do the work that we all share together. And even more obnoxiously, raise your hand if you have pledged to this fine institution. I bless you. Go forth and do likewise. The offering means a lot. But one of the things that we give to is for the full range of what is available here Sunday to Sunday. And you may have noted that virtually every aspect of the music today is the ringing of a bell. Let this bell ring in your own hearts.
Good morning. I'm Jackie Trimble Shapiro, she, her. While the choir is getting into place, I'd like to tell you a little bit about why we are singing this anthem on this Sunday. Many people think that the Bells of Rhymney is a traditional folk song, but in fact, it was written by Pete Seeger. Here is what Pete Seeger wrote about this song. The words were written by a young Welsh coal miner, Idris Davies, after what he called the angry summer of 1926. There was a general strike in Britain, which was lost, and he determined to leave coal mining. He studied for 4 years and became a school teacher. This poem he wrote will stand for many years, I believe, because he wrote it up in the heat of his agony in 1926 and the general strike. It has many layers of meaning.
The conclusion of the Lord's Prayer. As a conclusion, a coda, that is not said everywhere and it's not in every gospel. But you've heard it all your life. The coda leading to the Amen. Thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. These are startling assertions, claims extended to a divine and loving, compassionate power. That we all live in a realm that doesn't belong to us, but we may experience and rejoice in it for this little mortal while. And the one who prayed that prayer, over and over, we are told, rejected worldly political power at every turn in the Gospels. At the end of the 40 days in the desert, and a preaching that was radical beyond belief, and at the end of his days, his explicit rejection of the old messianic role, he said over and over again, this kingdom I speak of is not of this world. This week I read the marvelous book by Tim Alberta, The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory, a political reporter who grew up in an evangelical church. Indeed, his father was a pastor of a very large congregation in Minnesota. And when his father died, he went back to his father's funeral. He stood in the church, the sanctuary he'd grown up in, the evangelical church that had formed him. And even as he did his father's eulogy, people at coffee hour came up to him and asked him to stop writing about Donald Trump. And his wife literally went mad and said to Tim Alberta, "What is wrong with these people?" And so Tim went on a 4-year search to find out what had gone wrong in the evangelical church that he loved, had been formed by. What had gone wrong? He concludes that a very earthly human temptation had taken hold among the people that he loved and thought that he knew, that there was a glory to be found in power, raw power, the assertion of a minority against the majority, and that really this earth was no longer God's dominion, but actually one where Christians of a certain kind and variety, not all Christians, but a certain kind, could grasp this power and dominion. And that this turn in our national lives is more than a political story. It is a spiritual crisis. And for me, it is a frightening and profound one. Theology will fill this sermon, and I confess it will take me a while to flesh it out. But these are sadly things that do belong in our pulpit. And I confess I don't really like sermons like this. I certainly, 45 years ago, did not envision preaching sermons like this. But I also don't back down when I feel that they are utterly necessary. And I think today that's where we are. What I'm about to speak of leaves me uneasy. I don't want to speak out of hatred or prejudice or even fear. But I don't think that we should be asleep at the switch of our democracy or indeed of our souls. And here we are. It also makes me uneasy to sort of judge other people's faiths. That's generally a loser's game. But I will dance on the edge of that today and probably go past it. I know it's not good to judge other people's faiths. But when Donald Trump said to Christian broadcasters in Nashville last Thursday that, quote, he was a proud Christian, that too is where we are. Because in my understanding of growing up in the Episcopal Church, the word proud and the word Christian actually shouldn't be going together. That Christianity, as I experienced it in childhood, was a faith of humility and of forgiveness, where the last shall be first, where the poor exemplified the kingdom of God itself, and that the strangers were to be welcomed. That's what I read in the gospel. That's what I heard as a kid. I don't know how it got lost, as transmitted by proud Christians. The jig was up, actually, in 2015. The infamous interview on the Christian Broadcast Network, where Trump was asked his favorite Bible verse. Anyone remember what he said? 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians. But little remarked at the time was the question if he prayed to God for forgiveness. And he answered thusly. He didn't, because he had never done anything in his life to ask forgiveness for. He said that. Google it. This is actually Christian heresy. This is actually a blasphemy against God. But the Christian Broadcast Network adherents absorbed it, accepted it, rolled with it, and faithfully ignored, because more than 80% of white Christian evangelicals voted for him in 2016, and nothing has changed that since. It's locked in again. But 2016 was a different kind of election than this one's going to be. Seems a long way away. Because what white Christian evangelicals did has transmogrified and been transformed and evolved, and I believe degenerated, into an adherence of white Christian nationalism. It is an evangelical temptation to assert power and dominion over others. And I believe this is happening, and certainly Tim Alberta talks about it, because of a demographic terror over the browning of America. It has transformed a proud tradition into a heretical stance that somehow sees this political figure as a Christ-like figure who is sacrificing himself to the elites, and you know who I'm talking about, don't you? The elites, as a defender turned holy martyr. Now, you and I may have all along had a grudging suspicion that Trump was never going to be confused with St. Francis of Assisi. But I don't think it ever occurred to anyone that he could be presented as a figure, as a substitute for Christ. You got to just sit with that for a minute. And what we're witnessing right in front of our eyes is something closer to a religious cult than a political party that somehow lost its moral bearings. And that's where I think we are. That's why I'm talking about it from this pulpit. White, Christian, nationalism. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on the white supremacy element of this emergent identity, Not because it's not important, not that it doesn't deserve it, but if I fully incorporated the original sin of America into that toxic brew, this sermon would be 5 hours. And I know you would love it, but my knees wouldn't. And with our own humble limits, even in this congregation, I acknowledge our anti-racism service and program last week, and our service to an ongoing resolution to resist racism in our own hearts, in our own tradition, and in our community and in our society. And most of all, in our own hearts, to own it, because it hurts everyone. But we are also keenly aware that when Trump starts victory speeches evoking fear against, quote, murderers, rapists, and criminals at the border, or when he proclaims, as he did 2 weeks ago, that more blacks like him now because of his mugshot on his T-shirt sold at his website, I think that we can understand the passionate motivation that lies at the heart of this enterprise, of MAGA's movements. Because to make America great is an evocation of a white world where other races know their place. Because they're evoking a greatness from 1950 and sometimes I fear 1850. So that you as a white person can feel fully secure. I referred to the evangelicals as a proud faith tradition, and I do. I respect them. I have got evangelical friends. From the Greek evangelion, meaning good news. In 1980, the era of the moral majority, it was synonymous really with white Christians of all sorts and varieties. Conservative, yes, but not radical, not heretical. And then you add nationalism into the brew. Tim Alberta, in his search through his evangelical world of his childhood, in his heartfelt and anguished tour, he wondered what had gone wrong. What had gone wrong? And the key, after hundreds of interviews, so many evangelical churches he visited, his conclusion was in 2016, there had been a transactional arrangement made that Trump, although evangelicals didn't like him very much, would essentially be all right because he would be a defender. Robert Jeffries of Dallas, probably the most prominent evangelical leader in America today, was asked then, why Trump? He answered, and I think this is a startling, honest reason of why that happened in 2016. Quote, I don't want some meek and mild leader or someone who's going to turn the other cheek. I want the meanest, loudest SOB I can find to protect the nation. He was being honest. We should appreciate his honesty. This evangelical leader isn't looking for anyone who will turn the other cheek. And I wonder who said that. I don't know. There's a dim memory in the past of who this figure might have been. And why? Because evangelicals' numbers are declining, like most every religious tradition in America. But they are truly frightened. Young evangelicals leaving because they don't like the political arrangements that their parents have made. And women evangelicals are leaving. And Black evangelicals have never signed on, and Hispanic evangelicals and Asian evangelicals. This is a peculiarly white phenomenon. So I don't want to be seen as condemning an entirety of a faith tradition. But I also understand that in this evangelical decline, something powerful is happening within that community. So what did go wrong? As Tim Alberta concludes, it was because evangelicals decided to worship America. Now, I love America. It is a wonderful and flawed place, but it is a very imperfect project and filled with imperfect human citizens, and it's a poor choice for worship. America deserves our attention and our votes and our fond affection, but it is not a substitute for the divine. That's nuts. And in this demographic fear, David Brooks, the New York Times columnist, said, well, what do you expect to see in the next 8 years? And he replied, you better watch out for the death spasms. What do people do when they are submerged in fear? These are fueled by demographics, and they're very strong. In 2018, all white, non-Hispanic Christians represented less than 42% of America, down from 54% in 2008. That is a steep and precipitous decline. And evangelicals read these numbers with a great deal more attention than we do. And they would like, in this decline, to disprove what Mark Twain said in 1890. Twain said a long, long time ago, the only truly prominent community that fundamentalists have so far established in any world, imaginary or real, is hell. The writer Anne Lamott says, you can safely assume you've created God in your own image, when it turns out that God hates all the same people you do. Last year, the Public Religious Research Institute, along with the Brookings Institution, did a poll that tried to establish what is Christian white nationalism. What is it? I've been talking about it. Well, it turns out the people that self-identify as white Christian nationalists, which is roughly about 10% of the American population, two-thirds are up to a third are sympathetic to the evangelical point of view, but in terms of white evangelical, white Christian nationalism, about 10%. And they ascribe that Christianity should be the state religion. 2, that Christianity is, quote, important in being an American. And 3rd, that God wishes Christians to exercise dominion over all areas of society. And this totally blew my mind. 90% agreed to the statement, quote, God intended America to be a new promised land run by European Christians. If you ask Americans at large, religious Americans, not just the average guy on the street, 2 to 1, that assertion is rejected. And there you have it, in stark terms. And most religious people, they don't think this way. They don't. And let me also add that the white Christian nationalism is nothing less than a heresy. It is a new religion born in the ashes of an old one in death throes. Religious faith is not going away, but the old forms are. And this one is heretical in the extreme. Let's go back to last Thursday, the Proud Christian Day. Trump said, "We will protect God in our public square. I will not allow the media or left-wing groups to silence you, censor you. They want to tear down crosses where they can. But no one will be touching the cross of Christ under a Trump administration, I swear to you." Now, there is a biblical line that often describes Trump's basic modus operandi. It's from John 8:44, and you can quote this anytime you want. "When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies." But even in the morass of falsehoods, Trump is strangely open and self-revealing over and over as to what's going on here. And he's right. No one's going to get near the cross of Christ because they can't touch the essence of true Christianity. Not that way. He said the biggest threat, also incredibly self-revealing, the biggest threat is not from outside our country. It's really, believe it or not, from within. It's from people from within our country that are more dangerous than the people outside. It's true. Even evangelicals 9 years ago would have balked at that. The commercial that was made in the Iowa primary, again, Google it, it's absolutely fascinating. It's a 1.5-minute commercial called "God Made Trump." God made Trump. So we have to be clear-eyed. Trump was useful not because God made him, but because he was real and terrible enough to be their fierce defender. He was their King Cyrus, the Persian king, who in the Old Testament, although not a Jew, allowed the Jews to return out of Babylon in exile back to Jerusalem. But in 8 years has evolved a new evangelical relationship that has nothing to do with King Cyrus. It is no longer merely transactional, but devotional. The protector has become the martyr. In Nashville last Thursday, said, "If I get in, you're going to be using your power at a level you've never used before." And then he said, "I am being indicted for you," and he extended his arms like he was on a cross. And the people went nuts. These are bold proclamations. The national media isn't covering them the way they should. I don't know why. There is a normalization that's going on that I find shocking. It's one of the reasons I'm doing this sermon. Because anybody who talks about being dictator for a day, setting aside, of course, in an emergency, the Constitution itself, the establishment not only of camps to house and deport potentially millions of people, the invocation of the Insurrection Act, quote, on day one, the establishment of National Guard units from red states to police blue states. This is all the fertile brain virus of a guy named Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller recently said, "The whole world will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the powers of the president to protect our country will be very substantial and will not be questioned." He's head of the 2025 Policy Board. But there's another figure hidden in the background you may never have heard of. He's the anti-hero of this sermon. His name is Russell Vought. He is going to be Stephen Miller's opposite number in a new Trump administration if such a thing happens. He is a believer in what is called the Seven Mountain Mandate. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the Seven Mountain Mandate. That's good. You're a good group. That's why I'm preaching today. These things are difficult to cover, and the media sometimes to be completely asleep at the switch when the locomotive is coming at us so fast. Russell Vought is a seemingly mild-mannered Ohio Republican who was formerly head of the Department of Management and Budget. Right now, he's associated with the Heritage Foundation 2025 project and head of something called the Center for Renewing America. And on the list, or on the website, is the word freedom is defined by God, not man. And in the list of the policy agendas that you can look forward to is, yes, that good old Insurrection Act on day one to shut down any understanding of American protests that we have ever understood by military means, to stamp out LGBTQ plus gains by state and Supreme Court rejections of previous precedents, the end to the IVF procedures and surrogacy. Let's make America Alabama again. No-fault divorce, reduction of age to single mothers, which seems peculiarly cruel, the overturning of same-sex marriage relationships, and we liberals have trouble conceiving of it, but the end of birth control itself. I am not being hyperbolic. Not at all. And it all seems to be rooted in the bugaboo, the fear-mongering of immigration. One document says that one's national background is much less important than being admitted to America, quote, by accepting Israel's God, laws, and understanding of history. White Christian nationalism is really defined not by the saving of your soul. That was the old evangelical enterprise. But by the saving of society against your will. Life cannot, quote, be destroyed without incurring the wrath of a holy God, so said Chief Justice of Alabama, Tom Parker, who invoked the scriptures 24 times in his ruling. What's the Seven Mountain Mandate? The Christians have a mandate to assert supremacy over 7 features of culture: religion, family, government, education, media, business, and the arts. And quote from Tom Parker, "When the judges are restored, revival can flow, so that the righteous and faithfulness are the products, and as Chief Justice, I can help prepare the soil, exposing the judges and turning them to the things of God." The threat to America is not from people of faith. It is from citizens who are open to this kind of essentially theocratic dictatorship. We would be unrecognizable as a people without the urgings of faith that fueled the abolition movement, the civil rights movement. People of faith all across the board believe in holy and good things. But it is equally true that John Adams also said, "The government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion." The numbers are with people of goodwill, of all faiths and of no faith, on the side of decency and democracy. The majority of Americans, if they can be motivated to vote, have a different view of our future. But perhaps, and I hesitate to say this, but perhaps a naive one. The numbers aren't on their side, but enthusiasm and the Electoral College in so many aspects of current modern American life are very much in their favor. And terror, demographic terror, gives great power to people, allowing them to outwork and outthink us. And it isn't my job to tell Episcopalians and Methodists and Congregationalists and Quakers and Hindus and Roman Catholics how to vote, how to wake up. But it is my joy and responsibility from this pulpit to be as clear-eyed as possible so that we do not together sleepwalk into that reality. Sometimes our little liberal minds can hardly deal with it. It seems impossible. But the daily polls tell us otherwise. So what do we do? Well, we listen to James Baldwin, who said that, yes, there is great bitterness in American life on all sides. Bitterness born of centuries of misunderstanding and harshness. But he said, out of that bitterness is the only stance that you can approach love by. He said, love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live with, and yet also know that we cannot live within. The Christian writer Karen Armstrong has something she calls the Charter of Compassion. It doesn't belong to Unitarian Universalism, but belongs to people of all goodwill and all good faith. She writes, the principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions, calling us always to treat others as we would wish to be treated ourselves. Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures, to dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put something else there, to honor the sanctity of every single living being, treating everyone without exception with absolute justice and equity and respect. I conclude today by saying that all this, perhaps dispiriting and crushing though it be, is in fact a clarion call. I would submit that it is an evocation to be liberated out of our sleepwalking to a faith of true liberality and freedom, of dignity for all. This is an effort that is ours to share and must now. Let the people rise up for simple mercy and hope. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Well, guess what? We get to sing now. You've listened beautifully, and thank you so much. 1008 in your teal, when your heart is in a holy place. 1008. In a holy place, blessed with love and amazing grace when our heart is in a holy place. When there's a that depends on everything high. When our heart is in a holy place, heart is in a holy place, our heart is in a holy place. We are met with love and amazing grace, and our heart is in a holy place. Blessed with love and amazing grace in a holy place. And I stand aside of the saints, and I want to each other's hands. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place.
And now I invite you to recite with me the words printed in your order of service as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These
we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now may peace, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge of love, and may this peace be yours in the week to come, and go in peace. But I have a good friend who was a Unitarian.